anybody in the anyone in the hallway still? Is there everybody? I just don't want to start if we have another line here. So, well, welcome everybody. I know we have everybody pinned in the back, but we do have a few chairs up here. I just want to say welcome. I'm Jerry Smith. I'm president of the NWNA. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of neighbors coming out. I wore a nice shirt so I wouldn't get egged or tornadoed or anything like that. We have a lot of veterans here, which is tremendous. And if we can, Kathy, get started with the next slide. How's that? So I think we've handled this. The last meeting we were kind of filming people in the front. I think Ralph has overcome that. I think no one in the video screen
Except you.
Safe. What I'm worried about is someone's on camera they don't want to be on camera. Okay, so yeah, you know I'm not. I might just. Is that? Oh boy. You know what they say when they give somebody a mic. If everyone would please rise, we have the flag here. Great way to start a meeting. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. And thank you for coming. Obviously you care, you're here. We care about our neighborhood. We put together another meeting. I think this is what it's all about. I think coming out together, learning from each other. It's important that we get your voice. And we think we know the voice, but sometimes you really don't know until everyone gets together and has a little powwow and you talk. But before I do introductions and everything else, I will introduce the speakers. Just give me a second, a few minutes there, and I will formally introduce our speakers because they deserve that. But we have kind of a new regime. As you know, I'm new. I came in walking in the door a few months ago. Ed Gaitis, our VP, Ed, thanks for coming. He walked in with me. We're brand new. Our new secretary, Bob Puckett. Here's Bob. And just give it, you know what? Just acknowledge these folks. I mean, they really didn't know what they were walking into. So, Kathy's been with us. Kathy Ives, our treasurer. And we have a new public works chairman, Craig Frankel. Craig? Here he is. He's great. I mean, we had our first board meeting together with Bob and Craig, and these guys were tearing it up. It was great. I mean, you worry about someone sitting there and having an opinion and not saying anything, but we got it. I mean, it was great. Thank you for that, because we let it fly, and we appreciate it very much. So let's go to the next slide if you can. Now, before Michael comes up here, I just want to properly introduce this man. I think he's given really the opportunity for our development committee. And where's John Smart? I think that Michael and his staff has pretty much done our work. They will, I mean, John, when we look at the work that has been done within the first few months, it's really amazing. When you look at the development that has been happening here, we normally put out reports and slides, and we have pages of development properties. John goes on to the multi-listing and says, hey, this one's listed for this and everything else. But then we end up in a meeting with a pile of paper, but we don't have a map indicating exactly where the property is being developed and what stage is the property in. So this map has really changed the game for us here, and I just want to introduce a Navy veteran, Michael Ilches, and has been with us, I think, 33 years in Cape Coral. started as a water treatment plant operator, is now the interim manager of the city. Really, please welcome Michael Ilchizen.
Good evening. Thank you, Mike Ilchizen. I want to thank you all for inviting me to come showcase some great work that the City of Cape Coral has done, and obviously I had a great staff to pull this together really within 5 weeks. So one of the things that most frequently the city manager's office is asked is, what's going on in the Cape? Where is development coming? And what is it? So I brought together a team of staff and said, listen, one thing we have to do better at is communicating with our citizens, with other businesses, because there are certain business types that like to co-locate. So if you're a marine business, you want to be near boat builders. If you're a shipping company, you may want to be next to a packing and distributing company. So I sat down with the Economic Development Office and our IT department and our Department of Development Services. And I said, we need to publish an interactive map, a live map that businesses and residents can go to, at their will. If they see some dirt being scraped, if they see building construction going vertical, and really provide some data to them so that they can understand what's coming, either in their neighborhood or on their commute to work or to play in the evening. So what we did was we started to think about, okay, what are basically the stages of a development? So the first step in that process is a developer will come and say, I have an idea, this is the concept I want to build. They'll bring a set of design drawings to the table, and they'll submit that to begin the engineering review and the environmental review. So the first category that we have is called in review. And so basically what that means for the orange projects is that's the project that has not been approved yet, but is making its way through the process. As long as we get to a point where they meet all the requirements for the building, for the land, under the land development code or the zoning that it's in, then eventually that project will move to the second stage, which is approved. So on an approved status, sometimes you have developers who will get a project approved, get it entitled, and then they'll sell that project off to a developer who will go vertical. So an approved status would be a project that has already met all the regulatory requirements, the permit is ready to be issued, it just hasn't been paid for and picked up yet. And then that goes into the last step, which is issued, which is the green one, and that's one that has been reviewed, met all the requirements of the zoning and environmental process, has the developer or the contractor has paid, and that permit has been issued, and then basically at that point, vertical construction can begin. So this is kind of an output, a zoom in of what the map looks like. And again, this map is citywide, so it's not just in the Northwest. If you're interested in the CRA or along Del Prado, Burnstore Road, basically anywhere in the city, you can fly around this GIS map, look at different properties and see what's under review, what's approved and what's been issued. So if we take this large parcel next to Bubba's and take a look at that one, you can see that this is CCT fee owner, so the name of it is there, and that actually stands for Cape Coral Town Center. This developer has been working with staff for some time now to develop interior roads. It's a mixed-use project. It's going to have a town center development that has a promenade in the center with some small amphitheater or band shell, commercial property on the first floor, mixed-use development on the second floor. There'll be an access out through an LCEC easement back to Cetus and El Dorado, and then a main entrance at the front of the property. But you can see that the description is here, Cape Coral Town Center. Now, one thing you don't see in this map, what I was just explaining earlier, is we couldn't put all the documents related to the developments on this map. It would just create it to be very slow, bog it down. But what you can do with this data, if you're really interested and you want to have an idea of, okay, what is the Cape Coral Town Center going to be? Well, this would allow you then to get this site address and this permit number, and then you could put a records request into the city clerk's office or development services and say, I want to see renderings for that project. And then you would be able to see what that looks like. So we couldn't load all that on here, but it allows you to go the next step. You don't have to do a whole lot of legwork. I understand that the development team for Northwest was having to do that. So this will now allow them, if there is somebody interested or they want to present, hey, this is what's happening, you could just take that address and that permit number and request some additional documents. Next one. So this is an example of an approved project where the development has not, it's met all of the engineering requirements, the land use requirements, the environmental requirements. It's sitting there, the developer has not paid for the permit, and therefore construction can't begin. Here's another example at Burnstorm Pond Island Road. That one is in the same status, but this one here is Highway 17 Industrial LLC. This is going to be 3 multifamily buildings in the description, and then you can look at where its status is basically pending. And there is a value based on what they submit, so this would is an $80 million project. And then the last opportunity or last grouping of projects are the green ones, which means they're approved. And you have one at the Coral Shore Shopping Center. This is the Achieva Credit Union. It's just under a $2 million building, and that permit has been issued and work can begin. And and you can zoom in to kind of get an idea generally, or you can stay zoomed out. But again, this capability is throughout the entire city. So with that, I don't know your process. Do you want to open up the Q&A?
I think if you'd like to ask a question, if you'd like to come up, if you're not going to do that, I will try to repeat the question for you. How's that?
Sure.
So if there's someone and you cannot hear it, I will repeat it for you. Is there anyone here?
When is the new post office going to open on Pine Island Road?
I don't know. One thing we don't have are the private contracts between the developer and their construction company. So that data, the question for those maybe in the back you didn't get to hear is, when will something be completed? More specifically, this was related to the post office. We are not privy to the construction contract for any of these permits, so we don't have that data.
I work at the Postal Service, and we're going to move letter carriers in there within a couple of weeks, and we're going to deliver. I'm Paul Ellsmore. I'm a delivery retail supervisor at the post office, the big one. And we're moving the letter carriers in there in a couple of weeks. And we'll start delivery out of there, but we're waiting on equipment before the retail comes in. So when that will be, we can't really tell you yet, because things move a little bit slow when it comes to spending money. So we're thinking July, we might start retail, hopefully. But the delivery will start there, and so if you need to get a package, you won't have to drive all the way downtown anymore. So that's where we're at.
Thanks, Paul.
Yes, Mr. Earl Chisholm, I've been up on that map a number of times, and I applaud you for putting that up. That's an excellent resource. But I found that it would be very helpful. You've answered a couple of my questions. One of them is there any way on those projects, because the description doesn't tell you enough about it, and I know from reading the paper that a lot of times the developer has photographs, has drawings rather, that they want to show off that a little bit as well. Is there any way you could put a link on there? I saw where it says zoom in. Is there any possibility, I realize you can't put all of that on the dropout that comes up, but could you put a link on there that would take you to maybe a site, so we wouldn't have to go to City Hall, do a request, and get the documents? That would be very helpful.
Sure, if we, I'll research that. And I think what we could do, if we can't find a way to link the documents, the renderings or the site plan for the project, your latter suggestion of putting a link to submit a records request, I think we could definitely handle something like that.
Well, the other thing too is, it would also, I think, be very helpful if we put some of the big city projects on there, like Seven Islands and some of those things where we could get more information. And then how often is that map updated?
So this map is, the question was, can we put city projects on there and how often is it updated? It's updated every night at midnight. So any data that comes in today, we'll post to it tomorrow. I think it's around 2 a.m. is when it actually goes in and grabs the data. And then all city projects are on there once the permit has been submitted. So right now, your question related to the Seven Islands, we are actively working with the developer on the concept to make sure it aligns with what the Seven Islands vision plan was that was created in conjunction with the Northwest Neighborhood Association. Once that is complete and we think the vision is accurate and they actually submit, then that will get submitted, uploaded as a in-review project. But if you go on to Tropicana Park, if you go on to Crystal Lake or any of the other projects that are city, you'll find them there. The only thing that this is not going to show is single-family residential. So it's everything but single-family residential. It's multifamily residential, mixed-use commercial and residential, commercial, industrial. It's all development other than single-family residential.
Well, I applaud you. This is a wonderful first step to keep us informed. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a question, with all this development going on and everywhere I go, I like development, I sell real estate, but I see problems with traffic. The traffic flow, we're gonna be working on that. And also there was a development, I think it's Oasis on Veterans. And my husband was in the hospital, he didn't make it after the hurricane. And the nurse that was there there was flooding in her condo over there, the apartments over there. Are we gonna be doing that kind of stuff? You know, it was like, what, a year old? That building, and there was all flooding coming out of the ceiling, so just wanted to say that.
Sure, the question is related to traffic, transportation. So the position that I held just prior to interim city manager was the public works director. And in my time in that position, I had identified that the city was operating without a transportation master plan. So we have no vision for the next 20 or 30 years where major corridors are going to go, when we're going to drive and how we're going to have development help pay for some of that infrastructure. And so I brought that to our Transportation Advisory Commission, which is a group of 5 out of 8 council members, and they unanimously supported that, and that process is underway. It will take some time. We're gonna, this whole next year, calendar year, there'll be numerous focus groups, there'll be numerous engagement opportunities for the community to give input on what you would like to see as far as mobility options, whether it's micro transit, mass transit, or just commuter vehicles. It's going to involve hurricane evacuation routes and where those may be, what locations may be best suited for a roundabout as opposed to a signal, where we may need additional lanes, and when those triggers will start for design, and then ultimately funding and improvement. So I thought it was interesting. We had never had one, but I engaged the council and they agreed, we're gonna need that with this as fast as the city is growing. If you look at our growth model that the city has, basically it's a sigmoidal curve where right now we're at a point where we're growing at an increasing rate. So we're increasing at an increasing rate. And that model basically tells us, and the last time it was updated, it was off by about 2,000 residents. And the model is almost 2 decades old. That model tells us that by 2033, we're going to hit our inflection point where we stop increasing at an increasing rate, and we'll be increasing at a decreasing rate. So we have about 10 years left to get it right with development. What that means for us is we need to make sure that we have all the land use and zoning in place and appropriate. There are a couple more, I think, key corridors that we need to address, Kismet being one of them, Burton Store, the Burst, we just worked on. We're gonna continue that process moving into the zoning. Gator Circle is completely untouched. You know, if we can find a place for those residents to get some gas and grocery shop and not have to cross Del Prado. There's a couple, I think, key nodes that we still have a little bit of land use and visioning to do. But basically for the next 10 years, we're building out based on kind of where we're at. So we'll be adjusting along the way, but most of the vision and that land use and zoning is in place today. So identifying where those major evacuation corridors are, where those major intersections are going to be. We'll have stuff in there about bypasses, flyovers. We are also right now in the middle of a bridge master plan. I believe, and I don't know which ones yet, but I do believe there's going to be some bridges that are slated to be removed rather than replaced. Some of the bridges, you know, are in like little nuanced areas that really only serve a neighborhood of like 5,000 people, and there's another way in there. So, you know, it could be an inconvenience, but when we're looking at the amount of bridges the Cape has, maybe a better option is opening that up and not actually building another multi-million-dollar bridge. Some of them, based on the transportation master plan, will need to be aligned or widened or shift. I think some of them, you may know, as you approach them, road narrows and you have a funny jog in the road. Well, if that's a major corridor that needs to be 6-laned, when we go to reprogram that bridge and rebuild it, we'll want to construct it so that, we can have a major thoroughfare through there. That's a good question. Traffic is going to continue to increase, and with our transportation master plan, our goal is to, we can't get ahead of it. Traffic always, unfortunately, in the traffic engineering world, you have to hit certain volumes and certain limits to trigger federal monies and state monies. Also installing stop signs and signals. So you do the best you can to plan for it, and then when you get to that right point, then you implement it.
With the hat.
Me?
Yeah, with the hat, sorry.
Yes, my question is, does the city or the council have any committee that's working today to balance commercial versus residential tax base? Today, Cape Coral, the majority of our tax base is residential. And if it continues growing the way it is, and it continues to be a residential tax base, it's going to be a tremendous burden on every homeowner. If you look around all of Southwest Florida, all of these communities that have grown tremendously have gone in and built up some sort of commercial tax base within their communities. Is there any committee that's working on that could bring either, some type of high-paying jobs or some kind of commercial base that would offset some of the residential tax base that we're burdened with?
Thanks for the question. The question was, is there a committee working on balancing out commercial versus residential? Let me give a little history of Cape Coral to help kind of set the background for that. In the state of Florida, there's about I think 7 or 8 what we call pre-platted communities, and a typical hub and spoke approach to a city is you'll get a major node, and then from that node you'll grow organically off of that. The city of Cape Coral in addition to the city of Northport, Deltona, Port St. Lucie. There are several cities that are known as pre-platted communities, and we're constantly lobbying together at the state level, because what we have, unlike most of the other cities and how they grow, is we have basically the pre-platted development rights across the entire city. So at any given time, somebody could develop in the northeast, the northwest, southwest, southeast, as long as they have the appropriate zoning and land use. So we have the classic urban sprawl, definition, and we've owned that ever since we were incorporated as a city, just because of being a pre-platted community. Basically, all those development rights were granted by the Rosen brothers and Gulf American Corporation when the city was incorporated. We've been working for the last 50 years to try and adjust that balance. So we've been working to go out into the future, and this is sort of what I was explaining. I think there's still a few nodes that we need to address: Kismet, Gator Circle, where right now, if you were to look at a map along those roadways, you still basically see single-family residential. And we haven't identified those places where it would be appropriate for a grocery store, an anchor, or residential, non-residential development. Council is constantly trying to work on this. I will tell you that the only committee that I know that looks at this balance is kind of a new committee. It's called Cape Competes, and it really was put forward as a way to bring economic development incentives to drive commercial activity. They're more so on the execution phase rather than the planning phase. So it's where do we have property identified, a developer's looking for a specific set of criteria. They want 10 acres on water and sewer with 7,500 trips a day in front of their property. They want direct access, not a U-turn. So they're typically trying to find ways to incentivize development. The other board that we have, which is also more executing the plan versus creating it, is the Planning and Zoning Commission. So they entertain requests to either take a piece of property from residential to commercial, or from commercial back to residential. As far as the long-range vision and the planning, that is typically an administrative function, and that's where I believe, and like I've said, there's still a few places we need to go to really sit down and look at those and put together a thoughtful plan on where that would be. At the same time, we do have a council member, Bill Stanky. He's on our Tourist Development Council, and one of the things that is interesting that we've been working with him on for a while, we have, and for some of you may like this comment, or you may not like it, depending on how close what I'm going to say is next to your house. We have a really large contingent of short-term rentals in our city. This pre-platted nature and having all the canals that we have really has driven our market for vacation and tourism away from hotels. We don't have a lot of hotels in the city, but if you were to look at the number of housing units that we have that are registered as short-term rentals, you would see they're all over the city. They're everywhere. And what's happening is, when people are coming down to see the Boston Red Sox or the Twins, or they're here to spend a week during spring break to enjoy the beaches, instead of staying in a hotel, that family is getting a waterfront property in a residential community where everybody in the family has their own bedroom. They have a boat in the backyard that they can use, or a canoe and kayak. And so our council member has been trying to get the Lee County Tourist Development Council to recognize all of those short-term rentals as generating bed tax, so that we can get money back into the city, because right now it's all going to Sanibel and Fort Myers because they have the hotels and the resorts. So we've been working with him to try and help him be successful, bringing back some of that revenue into the city that will help drive funding additional amenities, building out parks, things that generate, you know, ecotourism or just any type of tourism. So we're not allowed to flip them to commercial because they're not, but we do have a lot of residential single family that is actually functioning more like a business than it is a single family home. So that's an interesting thing that probably is really a good paper for some student to write about on how we don't appear to have a lot of commercial, but when you really peel back that onion and look at what we have and how different we are, I think you'd see a lot. We do have a lot of more business than we are recognized for.
Can I follow up on that? Can't the city pass an ordinance that allows for taxation of short-term rentals? I mean, we just got rid of the food truck, that was easy. Why can't we do that with short-term rentals?
Sure, the question is, can we pass an ordinance to tax short-term rentals? So the state of Florida is a unique creature for those of you who come from different areas. The state has reserved all taxation to the state and only given municipalities and counties certain authority to implement taxes or fee. We're allowed to impose fees for service like water service, any type of utility. But if it's not explicitly stated in state statutes, a municipality is not able to create a new tax. That's reserved. It's called the statutory preemption. So the state reserves all that to themselves.
A few years ago, you slashed the impact fees to increase development. Now with all this development coming now, all the houses, every street you see, has that been restored, the impact fees? Because you're talking about all this infrastructure. Are we as taxpayers who pay impact fees have to pay for that?
So the question was the impact fees, have they been restored? I'm not familiar with exactly which one you're talking about, but I do know generally sometimes council reduces impact fees to try and get developers who might be building in Fort Myers or Punta Gorda here because the cost of entry is lower. I will tell you that we do have, we are utilizing our impact fees. So some of the question earlier about transportation, we do utilize road impact fees to build new roads, widen new roads. We have parks impact fees, which are used to build some new parks. We have public safety, life safety impact fees, which are used for training facilities, firehouses, and the like. I don't know specifically the point of reference on lowered and raised, but if you want, I can find out from your leadership here what your reference is and maybe see you afterwards and get an idea and provide an answer to your leadership to give you an answer.
You mind jumping out of line here, but are we going to talk about the water and sewer coming in the Northwest Gate? What it's going to cost each homeowner? Is that
We do not have that on the agenda today. It was on the last meeting. Actually, you can get that information. Just go right onto our website, NWCape, and go on the last recording. It's there from the last meeting.
Or you can just talk to me later.
I have a question.
We grab one over here and then I'm gonna come up front over here.
I just have a quick question. You're mentioning all the stuff for the parks and all of that. What about schools? I know it's Lee County, but Cape Coral is quite large and we're growing quite quickly and the schools are getting very packed. So how are you guys addressing that with the county?
So right now, another one of my initiatives that is not being presented here is Cape Coral at build out is supposed to be either the 4th or 5th largest city in the state. And right now we're, I believe, number 8. We've been in the top 10 for a while, but we haven't acted like we're in the top 10. And so one of the first things I did was I assigned staff members to start being external forces in the community. So I have somebody from our finance department attending every LCEC board meeting. I have somebody from the city manager's office attending every board of county commissioner meeting. I have somebody attending that Greater Pine Island Civic Association, meaning Matlassay, the Matlassay Fire District, and I'm working with our school board to discuss or have somebody be and start attending the Lee County School Board. You know, if we're going to be that large in the state, you know, we should be recognized when we walk in the room, and I believe that. For a long time, you know, the Cape has been growing very slowly, and we've never been in the position that we're in today, where we continue to grow and continue to break boundaries at not only the county level, but also the state level. And so putting in processes where we're a force at the table and a seat at the table in every discussion is important to me, because I think that's one way for us to make sure that things aren't going by us and nothing is being slipped by. I will tell you that, so the specific question about, you know, what are we doing with the county? Our Lee County School Board member that was elected from Cape Coral, Mr. Sam Fisher, since he's been elected and serving in November, him and I have already had 3 conversations. The Hector Cafferata school issue throughout that entire process, he was letting me know, you know, what the board was going to be considering. In my second week as interim, I reached out to Chris, the Lee County School Superintendent, made contact with him. We've communicated regularly. I'm also working with the mayor. Our mayor's, one of his initiatives to advance is the Safe Routes to School program, which is ensuring that every school student within 2 miles of a school has a sidewalk to walk on. In Public Works and in the city, we have made that a priority, and we continue to every year install sidewalks. If you're familiar with the Oasis North campus, you'll see the sidewalks we put in this past year. Our mayor and the staff that I'm hopeful to send over to the Lee County School District, once I find out who that assignment's going to, we're hoping to start asking the school board to match our money, so then we can speed up the pace at which we can deliver these sidewalks. We're putting a lot of money into it, and the school board's more focused on vertical, but we think the transportation to and from school is just as important. But I think the start is this regular communication between our elected official that represents all of us, and then from the top, you know, the CEO of our organization, me, to theirs, so that we can start building these networks of dialogue, so that when a planning program comes up or discussions about something in our community are coming down, we're involved and we're there. Prior, you know, it would just happen, and we would find out about it in the news press, or we'd find about it from a resident saying, where was the city? They had this vote, they had this meeting, and nobody was there to give input. We're now looking at agendas in advance, and we're showing up to the meeting. So that's what we're doing effective 3 weeks ago.
It's been 8 months since the hurricane, and the city have a plan to deal with all the signage and signing that's out?
The question is, what is the city's plan for signage and presumably traffic lights as well, to restore them? So we have, the city of Cape Coral has a contract with the Lee County Department of Transportation to maintain all of our traffic signals. We do not have any staff that maintains, installs, or repairs traffic signals. All that's done through the county. And unfortunately, when a hurricane blasts through, this one being the worst I've ever been, and I've been through at least 4 activations, a 5th one that I don't really count because it never came, but 5 activations, 4 actual storms. This one by far was the worst. So what happens when it comes through is a lot of federal money becomes available for the repair. And so what happens is there's a process where you can make emergency repairs to get basically a signal or a stop sign repaired. But then what they consider long-term repairs or permanent repairs, those have to all be reviewed and approved before you can make them, and the federal government will pay for it. So in the first 6 to 8 weeks, the county went through, just so you have an understanding of what a temporary or emergency repair is on a signal. Basically, you only have to have one head in any direction functioning, and it doesn't even have to be vertical or horizontal. It just has to be functioning so a driver can do that. That's what the federal government will allow us to fix right after a storm. Any other repair, wires hanging down, timing through the signal, cues with protected left or right turn lanes, adding additional supplemental heads, all of that work is considered permanent work. And so what we've had to do with the county, we went around to every single traffic signal throughout the entire city and documented every single issue with them. If it was a PET button not working, the PET pole knocked down, a span wire hanging, a bracket broken, a light missing, all of that was documented and sent into FEMA, and we're awaiting repairs. On the street signs, it's a very similar process. So what we focused on right after the storm was basically restoring all the stop signs, because that's a life safety issue, and getting basically a stop sign at every intersection, and did all the 4-lane divided roadways repaired, then the 2-lane into the 4-lane, and restored that. And then we had to go around and basically take a picture of every other sign, whether it was bent, twisted, missing, folded in half, created a gigantic report. And now that one, instead of being sent to FEMA, gets sent to the Highway Administration. And so we're awaiting their response on repairing that. And so as soon as we get authorization, then we're not going to do this in-house. We're going to contract it out and have teams of individuals come in, just like we did removing the debris, to come in here and just blast through the city and get it repaired.
Michael, what is the best way I'm sure we could stand here, we have him here, and I'm sure we can stand here all night. But what is the most effective way to get in touch with you?
First, you have to keep up with me. No, so listen, I'm very busy throughout the day, and I'm not gonna, this isn't an excuse in advance. There's a lot of things that I'm trying to accomplish for the city in my interim phase. But even prior to that, I was always somebody that took pride in getting things done. So if you send an email into my office, typically what's going to happen, and I'm just to let you know, my admin is going to read it, and then I have given her directions to assign it to the department head that is the most appropriate. And if they cannot resolve the situation, then they come back to me and let me know why, and then I help them out. But if you really do need to get a hold of me, just put in there, listen, this is, I need Mike to help with this one, or I need Mike to understand this, and I'll do my best. I find little pieces of time, 5 and 10 minutes between meetings and phone calls and speaking engagements like this to make it happen.
Yeah, well, it really works because, I actually got him here, so. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. You gonna hang out a little bit, or you gonna hang out? So, this is, kind of the halfway point in our presentation, so thanks so much. Michael L. Chisholm, everyone. Thank you. I really did not want that slide up there to give this away, but I got to tell you, in February, I was a little floored. We sent out a membership, survey, and God knows what comes back when you do that, right? So in February, when Linda Stevens was still here, and also with help from Kathy, we sent out this survey. And I thought for sure, as it came out in the back, the utility, you would override everything. Everyone was concerned about that. And then lo and behold, overwhelmingly, the North Spreader exit. Number one, 3-1, 4-1, 75%. We followed up. I said, you know what? At our March meeting here, it was members only, and I didn't mean to exclude everybody here. I just wanted to get to know the membership, my first meeting as president. So we never really have to do that again. It'll always be an open meeting like this, but I still wasn't convinced. You know, surveys, you have a business survey. I just wasn't convinced that it was that. So I had a show of hands here, and it was the same. I mean, 75% of the room nominated and made our #1 focus project, Northwest and the North Spreader exit. So, I started to really look at this then because I've been so focused on Seven Islands, which is why I'm here, really, as a resident, like you. That really sparked me to get involved. How can we make the Seven Islands and Gulf Gateway a perfect project? How can we polish it? How can we do it right? How can it be great? And how can we make this project, something that really shines in the whole Southwest Florida? So that's why I'm here. But you're here about this spreader. And after more than a decade, talk and hope, an action committee, you'll be happy, has been created to move this project forward into the waters all the way to Charlotte Harbor. All right? So how do we do this? So today, I announced the formation of a new committee, the Northwest Cape Waterway Committee. And who better to take this on, come out of retirement? John Bashaw, here he is. Thanks for doing this, John, really.
Thanks for asking me back, Terry. I appreciate it. So I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. I'm John Bashaw. I was the previous president, went into retirement. Terry asked me to come back and work on the cut. There also are a lot of new faces in the crowd. So I'm not going to make any assumptions about your level of knowledge about what the cut is and what the benefits are. The definition. The cut is a second navigable exit to Charlotte Harbor from the North Spreader Waterway. It's a second way out. The current state of the North Spreader Waterway, actually, all of the canals in the Northwest, is really not sustainable. And Jerry Smith put it into perspective in a way that really clicked for me, and I'll share it with you. The North Spreader Waterway is very similar today to what Burnstow Road was a couple of years ago. Remember when Burnstow Road was a couple of lanes? A lot of traffic, it was an evacuation route, a lot of building. So it was expanded, it was made to be more efficient, right? To get people out, and eventually there will be businesses there. The same sort of thing exists with the North Spreader Waterway. There is a tremendous amount of development happening in Northwest Cape Coral, residential and commercial, and there's a lot of boat traffic. There is also non-motorized sports or boat traffic in the canal. The rowing club, the Charlotte Harbor paddlers, there are kayak clubs, certainly a lot of people with boats. Just to put it into perspective, in Northwest Cape Coral, there are, and please don't fact check me on this, I think I'm directionally correct on it. There are about 4,000 Gulf access waterfront lots in Northwest Cape Coral. 4,000 or so. What they all have in common is if somebody lives on a Gulf access waterfront lot and they want to get to big water, they want to get to Matlacha Pass, or Sanibel, or Pine Island Sound, or Boca Grande, or Cayo Costa, They all have to head west to the spreader and then go south through Matlacha. That today, we're maybe 30% built out. In the future, when we're 60% built out, from the residential standpoint, there will be a lot of traffic. Think about the Seven Islands development. There will probably be a marina there. That's gonna add a tremendous amount of traffic as well. So we have to do something, right? Just like Burnstone Road was expanded, we have to do something with the North Spreader Waterway. We've decided that we want to pursue 3 options to solve the problem. 3 options, and I'm going to present them to you in order of ease of accomplishing. The first one's the easiest, the third one is the most difficult. So here's option 1. Could you?
I'll be the pointer.
Could you be my pointer? That would be great.
Turn the lights down a little bit? Yeah, please.
I think we're here, correct?
Yeah, so option 1 is an exit that gets you from the North Spreader Waterway to Charlotte Harbor, starting around Jacaranda.
So here's Jacaranda here. Okay? And then this right.
And that is the exit. So that is how you get out of the spreader, and it's a relatively short distance before you start heading south. So this is the North Spreader Waterway. This is the exit. This is called the Key Ditch, which is a man-made canal. Further down in the Key Ditch, you connect with a path that was created by Mother Nature, and you get to Two Pines. You get to Charlotte Harbor. The amount of time that it takes to get from here to Two Pines at very slow, no wake speed is about 40 minutes, 40. Now, this is not an exit that is big enough to bring large boats up, but it is a navigable exit today. And after I go through the other options, I'm going to show you a video of a boat in that exit, starting here and getting out at Two Pines. So option 1, it's an existing path that starts near Jacaranda. It goes south in the Key Ditch. It connects to some canals or creeks, tidal creeks that were created by Mother Nature, and it brings you to Two Pines. We good?
Can you elaborate on what Two Pines is?
I am going to get to that. Exactly. Pardon?
How deep is it?
It varies depending on the time of the year. Can you go back to option 1? So the Key Ditch, the man-made canal, you know, it's 6 feet deep, 5 feet deep, 2 feet deep in some spots. And the canals or the creeks that are made by Mother Nature, some of them are fairly deep, 3 feet, 4 feet. Some of them are very, very shallow. So really the only type of boat that's going to make it through here is something that draws maybe 18 to 20 inches of water. But it's a start, okay? So it's a start. So let me go through the other options and then we'll do that, okay? All right, option 2.
So Kismet Parkway, I'm sorry, over here, let me just move out of the way. So Kismet comes in, and if you do drive to the end, you can see this little tributary here. I mean, it's probably tough to canoe through, or even kayak, so you probably get scratched up, but it's not navigable right now by boat.
Right. Option 2 uses the same man-made canal and the creeks created by Mother Nature, but rather than starting at Jacaranda, it starts at Kismet. And remember, I said these are in order of ease of accomplishing. The first one, the Jacaranda option, you know, it's navigable right now. This option, some work would have to be done at Kismet, and that becomes much more difficult to do. because of things like oysters and seagrass and mangrove crowning. I do know, John, I know you're using that exit on your kayak now, right? But that's about all you can do with the Kismet option.
Hey, John, with Mike here, is this one of these city property here? Do we know?
Yeah, I think it's this one.
We were looking at that, Michael, at city property in this area.
Yeah, city owns that property right there.
It's 42?
At the turnaround. Yeah, right there.
So, you know, this is some synergy that we're looking at, so.
Okay, so option 2 follows the same path as option 1, but it starts at Kismet rather than starting at Jacaranda. Here's option 3. Option 3 doesn't exist today. Option 3 would be bringing in some heavy equipment and cutting a new pathway from the North Spreader Waterway to Charlotte Harbor, starting from scratch. And that certainly is the most difficult. It would require the most engineering, the most permitting, the most approvals, but it's not an option that I think we should give up. I mean, we can do 3 things at one time, right? We can be working on option 1, be thinking about option 2 and option 3, and trying to put teams together to make those things happen.
Yeah, John, I'm sorry, you asked for this though, you asked to jump in, you know.
I did.
We talked about
I
it.
did.
So, one of the challenges, you know, because we've been here, okay? Look at this sandbar, okay? Look at this sandbar, because you know, one would say, oh, well, let's just come right here. The problem is, it's a sandbar. It would take a tremendous effort and cost to get through this. Burnt Store Marina did it. They have 1,300 slips. But if you look down here, oh, there's a cut made by Mother Nature. That was my only point.
Yeah. So, what I think all of these 3 options have to have in common is the Two Pines exit, which is right here. As far as I know, and you know, I know there's some experts here that there may be some other, but it's the only opening that I know of in this sandbar that stays open all year round. And therefore, you know, I don't think dredging Charlotte Harbor is it's a realistic thing. And even if we were able to dredge Charlotte Harbor, we would have to continually dredge it like they have to do at the Burnt Store Marina because it closes in. That's why all 3 options have the Two Pines exit in common, and it is significant. So although all of these options may start somewhere else, they all end there.
John, as you told me the other day, all 3 of those time-wise take about the same time to get out. It's just ease of access.
Yeah,
That's
thanks
the
for
difference.
bringing that up. So the Jacaranda option is about 40 minutes. The Kismet option is about 20 minutes. Option 3, it would depend where it is, but, you know, I think the shortest distance, I'm pretty sure of this, I think the shortest distance to get to water is up near Crystal Lake somewhere. Right, so even if we made it to Charlotte Harbor at Crystal Lake, you would have to get south to get through Two Pines to get out to deeper water. So 40 minutes, 20 minutes, and I don't know how many minutes.
So for everyone's, you know, understanding, you know, we come out of the second bridge off Tropicana. Paul and I live there. It takes 25, 30 minutes to the channel at Matlacha, where we can go 25 miles an hour. So it takes us 25 minutes just to get to the channel. So, question?
Yes, John, before you start counting option 1, I live across the down from that cut. You really have to get out there, get that thing marked, have somebody go through there and determine how deep things are, because I hear people go in there all the time with 24, 28, 26 foot boats, and all of a sudden you get loaded for reverse, people
Great point.
screaming, and they're coming out. So before you really start pushing it to the Northwest Cape, get some signage out there, get some real details of people that understand what's going on. Because it's gonna
Great
be-
point, and thanks for reminding me. Let's go back to option one for a minute. There are a couple of things. Option one is navigable today, but I don't believe it's safe. And it certainly isn't good for people with fiberglass boats, gel coat boats. So the things that have to happen to option one to make it what I would consider to be usable by people, the first is there's some rocks that have to be removed very early in the key ditch, pretty close to Jacaranda. The second thing is there is some mangrove crowning that, not in a lot of areas, but in some areas, the mangroves need to be trimmed. The third thing is, it needs to be marked, not in the key ditch, but once you leave the key ditch, it gets really confusing, and it's pretty easy to go in the wrong direction. So what I would like to see happen is I would like to see the Mother Nature portion of option one marked as an extension of the Great Calusa Blue Way paddling trail. If you look at Two Pines, the Great Calusa Trail is there, it's marked there. I would just like to continue it. But there may be some other options, but you're absolutely right. You've got to make sure that it's safe for people.
The other side to that is, you said it's 40 to 45 minutes to get from Jacaranda out there. From my dock, doing the speed limit is 50 minutes to get to that shaped bridge. So it's relatively.
Yeah, but think of it, if you're going to Boca Grande,
Correct.
you got to go north.
We pick up 5 miles.
Yep.
At 40 mile an hour.
Yep. Okay. I want to show you a video of a boat in option one. Can we do it?
And I'll ask you to stop it.
Don, for reference, what is the, like, where is Kismet there, or where is Jacaranda there? Or are, maybe they're not even on the map?
So Jacaranda is here.
Okay.
Kismet is
Okay.
here.
Gotcha.
I'll take a couple of questions while we're trying to work out the difficulty. Yeah. Hey.
With this, kind of related, they're putting this new Seven Islands thing in, they're talking about a huge marina and all kind of things like that. Is there any process that portion of the cape can be cut in where this new marina is gonna be going in?
Possibly.
I mean, that seems to me, that's the most logical thing, and you got a little bit of,
Oh, so the question was, as the Seven Islands is being developed, could we essentially try to get a cut as part of that? And that would be option three. But
Team up with developers.
okay, here we go. Here we go. Can you stop it for just a minute? Perfect. So this is a video. I think it was Randy. Was it 2019?
You just mentioned this is pre-hurricane.
Yeah. This is pre-Hurricane Ian, December of 2019, option one. But in the map here, option one is entering at what's called Breach 1A. This also shows Kismet, but the dotted line is the path, and as you can see, it comes out at Two Pines, right? Let's do it. That's entering at Jacaranda in the key ditch. Now this is about 40 minutes, so it's been sped up. I'm not gonna have you watch a 40-minute video.
Wow.
See, it gets a little narrow in some spots.
How big is that boat, do you know?
22-foot cobia center console with 150 horsepower Yamaha on the back, no jack plate. You asked.
John,
Yeah.
was that during the King's High, highest tide we get?
No. No. Not at all, no. So we are now in the water created by Mother Nature. Could you stop there for a minute? Okay, just, keep going. Stop there. As you can see, it gets pretty big back there, and there are a lot of, and this is all created by Mother Nature, there are a lot of ways that you can go. That's why it's so important to market, so people don't get lost.
That's why John gave me the map.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
This is Two Pines.
And that's Charlotte Harbor?
That's Charlotte Harbor.
Yeah.
All right, John.
What does it look like now?
Can you just do the call to action? So, Jared, if you're good, we can open it up to questions, but I'd like to just do the call to action. What can you do? If this is important to you, send an email to City Council. And this email address, citycouncil@capecoral.gov, gets all of the council members and the mayor at the same time. And I would appreciate it if you would say that during the NWNA meeting, you learned about the cut. You learned that there are 3 options available. Option 1 is pretty close, and we would like to get started on it, and we'd like to get the city to help. Now, we're not an organization, by the way, that says, city, you have to do this. We want to be part of this. We want to do fundraising. We want to be involved in promoting. We want to be involved in making sure that it's safe. We want to be a part of this process. So, but it really starts with making sure that the council members understand the importance of it to you, and you communicate that. That's the email address.
Awesome.
Well, I'm sure you feel the way when John took me up there, and actually Katie took us out there too, which we'll be publishing that as well. I did not know there was a cut, so there is a cut right now. We're working on some bids right now for rock removal. We're looking at permitting, but there is a cut. And I think the work that John is doing and that we're doing collectively is we're starting to dig into permits and what exists now. When you talk to contractors, how do we get a small pontoon-sized barge into an area like that? It's tricky. But there are folks that we're talking to and contractors, we're learning from them that there are permits and there are ways to get things done. So how much money can we raise? I don't know, but I do want to have like a Margaritaville party. These are the things that I've heard from a lot of people, that instead of having just these straight meetings, very formal, right? It would be great to share a cocktail, to get together, do some social events. We are going to plan one. And Ralph Huber and I have gone out and talked to a few locations, but that's forthcoming. And I think enough of us stay around all year where we can pull that off. We don't have to wait to the end of the year. So that's coming. But, we're just turning John loose, just exposing the fact, and I really don't think a lot of people knew, like I did, that it exists. And believe me, it takes a little bit of confidence in boating. You don't know, once you get started in there, okay, you're pretty much, kind of finished, right? And then you're looking at tide. I know, it's scary. I do know that.
How about boats crossing each other? There's that number.
Right.
Yeah, and passing. But what we do know is that it's a ditch, and there's certain things you can do in a ditch that you cannot do in a canal. These are all things we're learning, and we're going to learn more. But we just want to tell you that instead of hoping that we are engaging in this, we are moving forward in this direction. This is the #1 focus of everyone here. So I encourage you to help us. I think it's money right now, and I really believe it's going to be that. Yes, sir.
Question, so who termed these the cut options 1, 2, and 3? And then the second question is, who has the jurisdiction over those ditches?
Yeah, I think that, the Army Corps is probably the chief or head party there, correct? Mike, you probably know. I mean, this is probably, who has jurisdiction and everything else, but I'll leave that one for you.
Is this why you asked me to hang around?
Yes.
Well, first off, let me say, for several years now, I've known about this because of John and because of the video and several other members in the audience that had started to figure out a way to make it from the far north out to the harbor. And I can tell you that the city of Cape Coral is committed to working with the Northwest and any member that you all designate. We've taken, well, let me answer the question and I'll tell you what steps we've taken so far. So the question, who has the jurisdiction over this? I was just sent this week by John, or maybe this weekend, some documentation that I have not had a chance yet to review, but maybe an interesting path forward that seems to indicate, based on a discussion with John, that stormwater ditches and certain conveyance structures have some exemptions from the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers. I have not had a chance to read it, so I don't know the validity or any nuances related to this option, but I do know that it is something that is being explored, and I just think it's phenomenal, the dedication that you and your team have on this. Here's what I do know. So, do you have a video or image or that you can go back to? Go back to that option 1 slide. Well, I'm sorry. The first one you had, the one that showed Crystal Lake. Oh, right there. Significance of 2 Pines. Let's see if this corridor will reach. Yeah, well, okay. So when the Rosen brothers and GAC were developing the city, the plan was ultimately to continue all the way out to the Charlotte Harbor, just like they did on the east side of the city, and push right to. And so you can see there's some, there's some development and parcels. This is a piece of a canal that was going to come out and connect, and there's some other like platted lands where they had intended on moving west, but eventually had to stop. As a result of that, you can see these yellow lines are your parcel lines. You can see that this entire area to the west of the spreader is one giant parcel. So that entire parcel itself, as a condition of the consent agreement or consent order that the Rosen brothers and GAC entered into with the back then Department of Environmental Regulation, all that land was deeded to the state, and so that is under the operation and care of the state. There are some deed restrictions that went with this conveyance. So when the land was given to the state, it didn't go fee simple without any restrictions. There is some language in that deed restriction, some deed restrictions in the deed that specifically say there is to be no dredging. So I've mentioned that to John, and I think that will be a significant hurdle on any path forward. But I do know this, and this is another option, and we've kind of talked about this, they're going to kind of trample on each other. The city owns this triangle, and this square, 1 square mile of property up there, does not have that same deed restriction as this. So one option, or one other project that we're working on right now, is to create a path from Calusa Parkway out to the city property, basically following Calusa Parkway. At one point, we were going to try and put that that path on the southern side. We had requested about 30 feet of land from the state for an easement for a connection, and they came back and said, can't do it. Can't do any work on that parcel down here. However, we're working with them to go back to them and utilize the north side of that property because it does not have the same restriction. So, falling back to option A, option 1, which is let's utilize the existing path that's there today that comes out at Two Pines. I've made contact in my previous role, working with John and some other folks in the audience on this. I've made contact with the park director who's maintaining this entire park. His name is John Aspialeta. He runs that park, and it basically starts at Boca Grande, goes all the way around the Charlotte Harbor, all the way down south Cape Coral, and even up the river a little bit. The park is just absolutely massive. I spoke to him about option 2, because when I initially spoke with John, there were a couple of other options that were being explored. So you had the cut at Kismet. Get my bearings here. Oh, it's not on the picture. Yeah. And so John and I walked through those. By the way, he didn't tell you he almost died that day.
You can tell the story, Mike.
I'm not going to tell this. You can tell them. But we've taken all the mayor and all our council members through this. We started to get the word out. But what I was interested in is what were the permitting hurdles to accomplish this. So from a regulatory agency, if we're not able to get the Army Corps out of the way with this ditch exemption, then there's things that I know of that I had to be looking for. And so that includes the protected species and any water quality species. So the mangroves were the first thing. And this option, as you saw the boat, yeah, there is some tight areas, but mangroves can be trimmed with a professional mangrove trimmer, and you can do 25% of the canopy each year until the point you encroach the aerial roots. I was looking for oysters, because if you ever try to dredge or do any work removing rocks, they provide a significant water quality benefit, and so oysters are a no-no, as well as tape grasses. They're also an endangered species. So we did have oysters at the Kismet one, as well as completely encroached mangroves, but this option 1 was fully open and all the way from the start to the finish, with the exception of the rocks at the front that were mentioned. There were no oysters and there was no tape grass. It was just sand. So it's a very, very, very promising long-term solution. I understand there's some time issues that may not alleviate a lot of time, but it could be another alternative. So when I spoke to John Aspialeta and I mentioned him, I said, listen, we're building a park called Crystal Lake. And part of the Crystal Lake Park has a canoe and kayak launch being built at the end of this canal here. And when John and I and some other people were discussing, okay, what are the logical steps to get from A to B, the first thing, and what he's advocating tonight that we discussed was, well, why don't we just at least mark the trail that exists today so that people can begin to use it and can get to and from and not get lost and not get, once you clear, the key ditch is pretty self-explanatory, there's really nowhere to go, but once you get out into this mangrove habitat, it all looks the same from the water, and unless you have a really good GPS, you can get lost. So the idea that we presented to John Aspialeta was, with the Calusa Blueway, paddleway, once we get to the point of opening the park that's going to have a canoe and kayak, how can we tie that ecotourism to get canoe and kayakers from that point there out into this environment here, or connect to the Calusa Blueway? I also mentioned him the option of dredging the Chiquita, or the Kismet connection, and his response on that one was pretty frank. He said, not while I'm the parks manager, not while I'm the parks director. And I did let John know that. he believes that's something he's not willing to take up. But he did say that he fully supported marking a trail between Two Pines and the opening at Jacaranda. So we began to explore that more, and I told him, you know, we're still going through our regulatory hurdles at Crystal Lake with the Army Corps, the DEP, the Water Management District. And what he actually suggested, we have not initiated yet, but what he said was, listen, why don't you mark a trail from the Serenia Vista canoe and kayak launch through those mangroves out to the Calusa Blue waterway. Then we can collectively, the city of Cape Coral and the state, understand that process and how to connect those two. Then when you get to the point of opening Crystal Lake, you already know the process. So the state park manager also is in support of this. We just have not really initiated either one of those. I think the vision here is appropriate. I think it will generate ecotourism. That in itself will allow us to then leverage trying to submit for tourist development taxes and get some additional revenues in to help build the park, help build this connection between the Calusa Blueway. So, long answer, but to circle back, you know, who is involved regulatory wise? The state owns that. There are some deed restrictions, and I've been very upfront with John. If this is something that the city was going to initiate, you know, the first thing we're going to do is contact the Army Corps and contact the DEP and try to work with those agencies. That may or may not slow down other initiatives that you have, because once they tell us what they would like us to do, then we're going to try to follow that. So I think some of all these other explorations and the ideas are wonderful. It is beautiful out there, but I can tell you I went through it probably a dozen times with the mayor, council, John by himself, some police officers. I think we did get, I mean, just full candor, I think we got stuck once, but we weren't really paying attention to the tides. So out of, you know, 8 or 9 times going out there, I think, you know, one time we maybe wandered off the trail. But as far as long-term vision and opportunity, with the absence of tape grass and oysters, it really has a lot of potential.
That's encouraging. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. Thanks for that. I think I just had a little bit of reporting if you want to go to the next slide. And Michael, thanks for hanging around. I just want to thank him on behalf of our group. Certainly got me through that piece. Appreciate it. So Kevin Black is not here, and I know Kevin is creating a following now. When we get a microphone in his hand, he's a character. But the parks update is pretty simple. If we go to the next slide. As a lot of you know, there's an eagle's nest on Tropicana Park, quite visible from the water. Right around 4 o'clock, it seems to be a good time to go view that from the water. Festival Park, all permits are in, and the bidding is starting this month. Crystal Lake, all permits have been received. Proposed bidding in April. So, you know, I'm probably not going to bother Michael again. So let's just go. So Serena Vista, Kevin had a better report on that. We'll get that out to you. But I think they're there and they're ready to install as far as restrooms. So that's some progress on the parks. It wasn't a park-centric meeting. It was really had a lot to do with John's work and the new committee here. And you know, after hearing Michael speak, pretty encouraging. And you know, one thing he didn't have the opportunity to read is the directive that John and I read about, you know, having the ability to work in a ditch. And I think he's going to be enlightened. I really do. So I just had a few things off the top of my head for members before we close, and we're on time. Anyone having problems with their wells drying up here in this room? How many, I mean, just if you don't mind, you know, We're gonna put out, probably a bulletin, and we're gonna take a survey, because I think we wanna drop a pin on our map of our area and see if the wells are specific to one area. Because if that's the case, we have to let, someone like Michael know. We also probably have to talk to the builders, also the people drilling wells, so they have to go deeper. But we're getting calls on this, so I'm sorry to hear that that's happening. I was told that when the rains come, it does get better, but we're talking about an aquifer issue, so what do you do year after year after year in all this building? And some of the questions I received is, with the brand new sod lawn going in and the builders letting the sprinklers go on and on and on and on. So the other thing that I think a lot of you saw on the bulletin was the porta potties in the waterways, right? And thank you, because I think Ralph was going to convention. Kathy was having a glitch with the computers, so I said, send it to me, So, oh my God. I had probably 60 people. I had about 20 people report the same one over by the mayor's house. And anyway, very quickly, in a matter of 24 hours, we had, about 32 locations, and we got it to the contractor. So if some of you reported it and still have them there, let me know. I have the list with me, actually.
Is it only for the waterways?
Yes, it was the waterways. They were cleaning it up.
Yeah, because there's plenty around my neighborhood.
Yeah, on land, right? So, these are just little sidebar things. The well thing is concerning as a resident. Where is that area? And I think it is one area. We'll find out more. And the last one is for you. And we can hang out a little bit because we have to put the chairs away, I guess. But, we have till 8 o'clock to close this place. But questions for us? Is there any questions that are lingering around? Anything you want us to tackle? Sir?
Just a quick question about the Eagle's Nest in Tropicana Park. Is that going to affect what the plans were set out by the city for Tropicana?
I really don't know how that's impacting permitting. I really don't know. I tried to be the trusted source of information, so if we don't know, we'll tell you. Sir?
On the cut through, just out of curiosity, I know you can't put a timeline together, but in your own heads, do you have a reasonable amount of years you think it might happen, and if it's gonna happen, or what percentage you think it may be able to happen?
I think, our goal is to raise a little bit of money right now. John, why don't you come up a second? This is John's baby. So I think initially we want to get the rocks out of the way so we get in there, and we want to get people to try to work on, we have a permit in place, I think, to start trimming mangroves. But let me turn it over to John.
Thank you. So option one, as you saw, it's navigable now. We do need to remove the rocks. That could be a 30-day thing. Within 30 days, get the rocks out of there. Regarding trimming of the mangroves, we really don't need to trim now, other than some of them that have fallen in as a result of Hurricane Ian. And my concern is the mangroves that have fallen in are gonna start taking root, and then they're no longer trimmable. So we've gotta do something relatively quick on that. So, but, option one, I would say within a month or two, it's gonna come down to marking. I have no idea how long it would take to market, but, I've got a Navionics track that's got all the breadcrumbs. So if you're a Navionics user, on a smartphone or an iPad, you can get out. Option two, based on what Michael had said, that's the Kismet option. That's really long-term. And option three is even longer, unless maybe there's some sort of an opportunity to leverage the work that's being done with the Seven Islands developer. Sort of is what it is. Yeah.
First, I'd like to get on your committee
Okay.
to help, but I would caution what we say about navigable waterway. I've been on there, I've got a fishing jet ski with a depth finder and everything on it, and I ran aground 3 times since the hurricane. So it's not, navigable waterway could be anything you could float a matchstick in, so it's
Good
you're gonna
feedback.
have a lot, you can't turn around in there with a big boat, you can barely get turned around in there with a jet ski, so if we're saying navigable waterway, you're gonna have a lot of people stuck in there, at least now. There's toilets, there are porta potties back there, there's all kinds of stuff back there, but it is not navigable unless
Okay.
you're, and if we have 4,000 homes like we talked earlier, these people that are building $500,000 to $1.5 million houses aren't putting kayaks on their lifts.
Got it. Good feedback. Thank you. Yeah.
I had the same comment. I was listening to what you were saying about the definite waterways that exist now. What happens at low cost? What happens with inexperienced boaters who go out, spend a day, turn around, and come back, they can get in? And the same thing with Seven Islands project. You know, they really should be brought into this because their way out now sucks. And when they have, I don't know how many slips that they think they're gonna build, let's say 100, but I'm sure it's more to make it profitable. We're gonna throw those boats into the mix too. Those people are gonna be spending a lot of money. They're not gonna think the biggest thing they can get is a 22-foot pontoon boat. And I think the developer needs to be made aware of where we're headed and what help he could be, because it's gonna impact the value of his property. And he also is gonna have the biggest hammer. To me, we want him involved and look for number 3 being number 1, a new cutout.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment that I've been coming to these meetings for 8 or 10 years, I don't know how long now. But I'd like to see if you can lock this guy up for at least a couple of meetings a year. That is the most knowledgeable city already.
Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks ago, there was a lot of helicopter traffic, and he looked like he was landing out in that area.
The
Does
mosquito
anybody-
control.
Does anybody know?
It's the helicopter for the mosquitoes.
Mosquito control.
So they're just going low, not landing, but going low and flying.
I don't know, they almost hit our drum.
Yeah, Jerry and I were out there when that was happening. Any other questions, comments?
This is a little on the side, but we're talking about all that traffic going through with Seven Islands and everything. At one point in time, we had a diagram of the plans for the 2 boat ramps right at D&D, a restaurant, 2 boat ramps. Is that still in the works too? It'd be nice.
You had your chance.
Oh,
Take it away.
My booking fee is going up.
Need a free water?
No, but I'm looking forward to the margarita speaking engagement. So, D&D, that boat ramp, unfortunately, it hit a couple of legal obstacles that we've been wrestling with for a year. Since I've been interim city manager, I've had 2 meetings with the county on that. Just to be open about the situation, so Lee County Board of County Commissioners absolutely does not want the city engaging in any more annexation heading west. I found out recently that, at least it was said, I have not been able to verify that the Lee County government or Board of County Commissioners actually helped Matt Lachey fight our last annexation to the tune of $15,000. I heard that out of Matt Lachey. This is part of being out and going to other meetings. There was a statement made at the Matt Lachey Civic Association that they have $15,000 in a war chest, thanks to the board refunding their efforts that they used against the city there. So I found that interesting. Haven't had a chance to verify it. But that's, in my last 2 meetings with them on it, basically they've said, look, this has to be off the table. We have to take off annexation. For us, for the city of Cape Coral, it's just a matter of the amount of people we're going to have in the future, and even the people we have today, and the access to a boat ramp. We just don't have enough of them. We need so many boat ramps per 100,000 or per 10,000, depending on how granular you want to get, and we need them. We need them. So that site for us, having picked that up in our 491 purchase, was just it was just phenomenal that ended up being part of the acquisition. So the plan that we've been negotiating for the last 2 years, and that, by the way, that design is 60% complete. And that's when it hit basically a wall. We submitted that plan to the Lee County Development Services staff, and part of that plan has our boat ramp parking in Pine Island, basically in the right of way of Pine Island Road. So I reached out to the Public Works Transportation Director at Lee County and said, listen, how can we get through this? You allow on-street parking, we as a city allow on-street parking. This is a needed boat ramp for both Lee County residents, Cape Coral residents. How can we get some extra boat ramp parking in the right of way? And they basically came back with 2 things. This is the transportation department. They said you need to put a guardrail to make sure if anybody goes errant, they won't go crashing into the trailers. And oh, by the way, on the other end of the city, where we have been annexing, moving east, there's 2 roads, Hibiscus and Delpine, that are actually county roads. They said, we want you to take over maintenance of those roads. So it was kind of a little give and take. So my response to them was, well, I'll take over those roads as long as you either pave them before we take them or you give me cash in an account sitting there so when they are ready to pay. This way we've got, you know, at least 20 years covered in this negotiation. So we started to advance that. We drafted up an interlocal agreement, and when that interlocal agreement between Public Works of Cape Coral and Department of Transportation of the county made it to both of our legal departments, the attorneys got involved, and what was pointed out to us was that is considered outside of the city, extraterrestrial, or not extraterrestrial, extra, I forget the name, it's slipping my mind, extraterritorial, thank you very much. Yeah, glad I can make you laugh. I wasn't trying to be
I'll be right the first time.
So in order for us to be allowed to operate, which I find interesting because we're already operating it, we own it, and it is today. But in order for us to do that in perpetuity and not have any legal challenge from Matlacha or Pine Island be able to arise, we needed to sign an agreement that basically allows all of Lee County residents, we basically had to go into a process that would allow all of Lee County residents to agree that we would be operating a boat ramp outside of the city. And Lee County's attorney said, no way, not gonna do it, it's gonna look like annexation. Matlacha and Pine Island are gonna fight us, they're gonna fight you, and we basically have a dead agreement. So it's kind of sat and has gone nowhere. In my last couple of weeks, I've had 2 meetings with the deputy county manager and their legal team and our legal team. And I said, listen, what's your line in the sand? And I'll tell you, our line in the sand is we just need it to be a boat ramp, and we need to get credit for the boat ramp. We need to be able to put that on the map, have it be part of our comp plan to be accessible to our residents. And they said the only thing that's off the table for us is this annexation. So we've begun to start working out basically a term sheet on actually partnering with Lee County to build the boat ramp. We're exploring different avenues. We're not by any means done yet, but success, I think, for both of us is that it's a boat ramp. There's some kind of sign that says this is a joint partnership between Lee County and Cape Coral, and both our residents with boat passes and Lee County residents with boat passes can use it. So that's our vision, that's our goal. We've only been working on it 2 weeks, but we'll get there. I know we will.
Can you update us, please, on plans for expansion of Burnt Store Road north of Kismet into Charlotte County, or up to Charlotte County?
Yeah, so Burnt Store Road, north of Kismet to Charlotte County. We've been working with the Department of Transportation on they're entering into their PD&E, planning, design, and engineering stage, which looks at basically rough order magnitude, how much asphalt they need to put down, how big of stormwater treatment areas they need to have, where those may be located. They contacted the city, they've also contacted other landowners to see would any of us be willing to sell. It helps them understand if they need to go into condemnation, and then if so, they have to put those costs in there. So it's at the entry level. Right now, they're doing the PD&E, that study will come out, and then eventually the Board of County Commission will pick the best route and try to buy what they can, and then ultimately may have to condemn where they need to. So it's in the very early stages.
Would you like to adjourn the meeting?
Yeah,
thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Hey, we're gonna clean this up. If you have any more questions, just get with me as we're kind of getting the chairs together. I do want to get the library work staff out of here at 8, okay?
Next meeting.
Next meeting, I'm looking to do them every other month.
Okay.
Yep, we're gonna keep it going. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Yeah.
How are you? Thank you for the words of support. Thank you.